Hi, I'm Commissioner Rob Gelder, and welcome to this episode of Commissioner's Corner. Today we're going to talk about a lot of different things in Kingston. We're going to cover the improvements to the Kola Kole Schoolhouse. We're going to get a sneak peek at the Kingston Village Green Community Center, and we'll also be talking about Complete Streets. So stay tuned and you'll learn a lot. Welcome to this episode of Commissioner's Corner. Joining me now is Tessie Scott, who is the president of the Kingston Cooperative Preschool, along with Rick Catron, who's with our Kitsap County Parks Department. And today, right now, we are in front of the Kola Kole Schoolhouse. So as part of today's program, we're talking about all things Kingston, and this is just a wonderful example of some of the things that have been happening in our community locally. And so, Rick, if you could start off by telling the viewers really about what kind of investments has the county made over the past couple of years in the Kola Kole Schoolhouse?
Well, this turned out really nice, Commissioner Gelder. This is our 1909 schoolhouse. This has been in the community since all that time. And I was tasked last year with restoring the exterior of the building. So you can see we started off with a paint job and we replaced some windows. We also recently put a new sign in. So that was the start of the exterior renovation on this historic building.
Well, very cool. And I know a couple of years ago, I think we started off maybe with our roof and the gutters and downspouts, sort of kind of buttoning it up from the top on down.
You're right. That was before my time.
Yeah. Oh, before your time. Mm-hmm. But so I think, can you talk a little bit about the investment, financially, that the county made in this historic site?
Yeah. So we spent about $110,000 on the exterior improvements last year.
Okay.
And we went back with the original paint colors of the building, which was fun because this building's been painted a variety of colors over the years.
Right, so what do you call those colors that we are seeing on the building now?
Well, there's a great little backstory on that, and we were doing some research on another project last year. We came across a book called Little Village by the Sea, which is a history of Kingston. They had pictures and a little narrative on the 1909 schoolhouse. In that book, they referenced the original paint colors. At the time, it was referred to as leaf green and cream. So I went onto the computer and referenced those and typed in 1920s colors and found out the equivalent. All colors these days are color-coded on computer with numbers. So I was able to find the current number. I went to a local paint dealer that specializes in historic paint colors, and we were able to backtrack and find what it was. So this is now referred to as Fairmont Green and Cream.
Fairmont Green and Cream, excellent. So Tessie, what has this meant for the cooperative preschool? That's been here for 50 years now, just had a celebration last fall of the 50th anniversary, but it's got to be some kind of a shot in the arm of some sort, or a certain amount of pride in the preschool. So
for sure, we've really enjoyed the change that's taken over the last few years. First, starting with the roof, that made some huge improvements, and then this year with the siding and the windows and all the exterior work that's been taking place. We did start school just a couple days late, but we were able to add on a couple days at the end of the year, so it really hasn't impacted us too much. It's been great having them being able to work on the weekends and kind of off hours or when we're out of school to kind of accommodate the process of the preschool, just to keep it safe for the kids and keep the grounds safe. It's been really enjoyable to see that aspect. It's helped. We're a cooperative preschool. We work cooperatively as a family. All our families work cooperatively. So it's been nice to see everybody else cooperating with us and trying to get things done in a way that's safe and fair for everybody.
So did you hear any comments from attendees at your reunion
the
celebration?
We definitely did. We actually, for probably, at least 2 months ahead of time, people were stopping by randomly during the project over the summer when we first started school, when the teachers were cleaning up in there. schoolhouse used to house the library before it moved over to the community center. And the actual librarian from the schoolhouse was here and did a tour and kind of told some stories, which was really neat to see. And then with our 50th anniversary party for the preschool itself, it was great to see a lot of alumni and people come through, and old stories from people that attended the school well before it was even the cooperative preschool, but when it was the original schoolhouse. So it was really neat to see the community kind of come together and comment and get to see and walk through. And we had the old photo albums out. It was really, really nice celebration for sure.
Well, wonderful. I know this is such a, when anyone's coming through Kingston or in Kingston, this is geographically pretty center to the village of Kingston, and very visible when people are leaving the ferry and coming through town. So I think it was wonderful that we were actually finally in a position as the county to be able to have the resources to make this kind of investment and really kind of bring it back to life. So it's been wonderful. Now, Rick, I know that we've been doing other things this year as well, trying to do a little bit investment in the fields and kind of giving them a little breath of life as well. So can you talk a little bit about that?
Yes, there's a baseball field behind here, which is part of the original school. And we recently started doing some irrigation improvements to bring the irrigation back to life. We had to do some pruning around the building when we did the painting. So we're going to be restoring the landscape right around the immediate building as well. And I'll be working with Tessie and the volunteers from the school to come up with a good planting plan that's historically accurate and will be easy to maintain.
Well, great. Wonderful, because I think that's one of the key things that as a all-volunteer cooperative preschool, we want to make sure that it's easy to maintain in the long run. And so I think having new windows, which are, are current day and not necessarily single pane, makes a big difference in terms of heating bills and all of that. So it's more energy efficient, it's easier to maintain, and it's a wonderful historic lady that's in the center of the downtown Kingston core. So thank you very much for your long-term tenancy here.
We appreciate it.
And your work as president. It made a big difference in terms of our ability to work together to make this project happen. And Rick, for everything that you've done to help her find a new day and a new light in the center of Kingston. So I appreciate it.
It's been a fun project, and it really is the heart of Kingston.
Well, wonderful. Well, thank you all. We're going to stay tuned for more. We're going to go to another spot in Kingston and you'll learn some other stuff. Welcome back to Commissioner's Corners. Right now we are at the location of the new Kingston Village Green Community Center. And joining me is Dave Wetter, who is the Vice President of the Kingston Village Green Foundation. And he's also the project manager that's been overseeing the construction of the new community center. So Dave, this is pretty darn exciting.
Yeah, it is.
I can look back on any number of the Commissioner Corner episodes, and there have been some that were done by commissioners before me, and I know I've done at least one other one, but it's kind of nice. I mean, did you ever think this was actually going to happen?
Well, yeah, all of us were believers, and we knew it was going to happen. The big question was when. And we're here. We're within 30 days of opening, so yeah, our group is pretty excited.
Excellent. I mean, it's just, you can see and kind of feel the excitement throughout the community. Anybody that you talk to, this is probably the biggest investment in the Kingston community in a number of years. So it's pretty fun.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing too for the size of our community to put together such an intergenerational facility as this and raise all of the money through donations and grants and stuff like that. Yeah, that's a pretty exciting part of this project.
Yeah. When you see it all come to fruition, I think we've got senior housing on the campus right across the street.
Right.
We'll have Boys and Girls Club, Senior Center, library. Pretty darn exciting. So why don't we invite our viewers to come inside and check out some of it with us?
Okay.
All right. Come along. So welcome inside to the Kingston Village Green Community Center. Dave, what can you tell us about where we're standing right now?
Well, we're actually standing right in the lobby, Rob, and right behind me is the library, the Kingston Regional Library, which is 4 times the size of the existing library. On to our left here is a display wall that kind of simulates the side of a ship, kind of consistent with the maritime town that this started as. And these are ribs of a ship, and in between will be panels with historic Kingston photos that are backlit.
Wonderful. What would you say was the biggest challenge in pulling this project together?
Money.
Money?
Yeah, that's the short answer. Fundraising has been a challenge from the get-go, and the good news is we're about 85% there, and we still got some more to go, but we hopefully will be open in another 30 days.
Okay, well, let me ask you another question about that after we get to the banquet room. Sound good?
Great.
All right.
Right.
Thanks. Let's go. Well, Dave, now we are in the banquet room. What do you want to tell us and our viewers about this space?
Well, this space is actually one big room right now. It's dividable into 3 sections of about 1,000 square feet each. So each one of them has an access out to this outdoor patio and this great view of Apple Tree Cove Bay. And we have a kitchen just right behind us here. Full commercial kitchen that can be used as a teaching kitchen for the Boys and Girls Club.
Great.
And with this full audio visual in this, we have the ability to have up to about 200 people when all the partitions are open, and individually maybe around 60, 65 when you divide the space up.
Excellent. Now, before you were talking about the biggest challenge of this project was fundraising, and I know that some donors are the visionaries, they're willing to kind of be the first out and fund that, and others are wait for something to start emerging from the ground. How has the construction helped the fundraising efforts?
Well, I think once we broke ground and people saw that it was reality and not just something that was 10 years off like in the beginning, some people have come out and helped us kind of reach closer to our goal. As I said, we still have a ways to go, but yes, definitely when something is there and people can touch and feel, and hopefully when they start using it, it'll spur them on to make us meet the finish line.
Excellent. So you're hearing it here. There's still opportunities to invest in this wonderful community asset. So if you want to, check out the Kingston Village Green website, and we'll make sure you have the address at the end of the program. But Dave, why don't we go out and check the Boys and Girls Club
Great.
space? Okay. So now we are in the Boys and Girls Club space. So Dave, can you tell us a little bit about this space, definitely compared to what the Boys and Girls Club is using now, and we'll go on from there.
Yeah, well, the Boys and Girls Club started here maybe 10 years ago as a very small operation, and is still in the middle school. And they are one of the partners in this project, and we're in their space right now. They have the room we're standing in is the kind of the big game room, and behind us in that direction is the teen room, and right behind me in this direction is the arts and crafts room. And they have their own access to the outside here, or they can come down the hall like we did. And yeah, they're pretty excited about coming in here. It's much bigger space than they're into now.
Exactly.
And they also have access during the Boys and Girls Club hours to the multi-purpose room that we were just in, with the basketball hoops and the volleyball setup. And in non-Boys Club hours, they have that's available to the rest of the community. They also have a computer tech lab down the hall, and again, that's available to the Boys and Girls Club during their hours, and then available to the community in non-Boys and Girls Club hours.
Oh, awesome. Can you tell our viewers a little bit about the construction? I understand some type of LEED certification is trying to be achieved, et cetera. So how did that come about in terms of design?
Well, it was a requirement of the Building Communities grant.
Okay.
And that was just one of the pieces of our fundraising, and they require that this is a prevailing wage job, which it is, and to be LEED Silver certified, which is 50 points on a scale of 100, with platinum being the top. And so that requires a lot of things to harvest light and energy management and all of those kind of things that help it be more sustainable and less impacting to the environment. So you really don't get your certification until about a year into the project.
Okay.
So, and that depends if the things actually perform as the way they were supposed to. So to get 50 points, you have to kind of have a little insurance. So this design is actually 53. and we certainly hope that we'll have 50 by the end of the job. Concurrently, we have a group that's working on solar power for this building, and it's a separate group that's looking at putting together some investors, and that certainly helps with lead points. It's not originally in the project, but it's a possibility. We have an excellent south-facing roof here that's ideal for solar power.
So would the community center be able to benefit from that and then potentially have the excess go onto the grid?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Wow. Awesome.
Yeah.
So it could be LEED certified and inspirational space. I mean, because this
We
is
hope so.
everywhere I turn, this is pretty darn exciting and
Yeah.
just wonderful. Open, I mean, especially in the Boys and Girls Club, you just
Yeah.
look out the windows and it makes it almost feel like you're in a tree house of
Yeah.
sorts. And just, it's this great space. I can't wait for the grand opening to happen.
And well, our goal was to create value for our community, and I like to say that our project won't necessarily make it into Architectural Digest, but it'll be a project that this community is proud of.
Oh,
and I
definitely.
think we are.
Well, there's another wonderful inspirational space out in the patio, so why don't we take our viewers there next?
Okay.
Okay, perfect, thanks. So now we're out on the patio space and behind the building, and Dave, what can you tell us about the vision for how this space will be used?
Well, this is kind of like a little gathering spot or retreat spot or meditation spot, have it what you will. It's a patio on the north side of the building, so it's kind of protected from the weather. But as you can see, we're in the southern sun because of the low roof line right here. And we have a donor walk that's right behind us here, where individual members of the community have bought a paver and engraved it something that was important to them. And we still have more available if you'd like to get one.
You heard that here first, yes.
And we're right here on the edge of the wetlands. You can see the split rail fence behind me that delineates where that begins. And yeah, that's pretty much the patio here.
So what remains to be done before opening?
Well, as you saw in our walkthrough, and hopefully you didn't see a lot of it in the video here, but we have a few things left to do. We have some cabinetry work that has to be done, a little bit of drywall, a little bit of HVAC, and some electrical, and a little bit of landscaping out in the front of the building. But it's all very doable and should be done pretty soon. We just got our TCO this morning. So that's good news.
And the TCO stands for our viewers?
Temporary occupancy permit. It has some conditions that have to be satisfied, but very doable in the month that we have remaining.
Wonderful. So speaking about a month remaining, what are the plans for the grand opening ribbon cutting?
Well, it's, anything of this size, it's going to be pretty cool. It's going to be set for Saturday, April 30th. And all of the details and all of that is being planned right now. I'm not on that committee, so I can't really speak to it, but I do know it's a big deal.
So if folks are interested in the greater Kingston community, come check out the project. You'll have an opportunity that's just prime on April 30th during the ribbon cutting to see it all in its splendor. And Dave, thank you very much for being part of the program today. And next we're going to be talking about Kingston Complete Streets. So stay tuned and you'll learn some more. Well, welcome back to this episode of Commissioner's Corner. Right now we're going to shift gears a little bit and start talking about Kingston Complete Streets. And so joining me is Terry Record, who is with McLeod Record and the consultants that have been working on this project with the county. Terry, thank you so much for being part of the program today.
I'm happy to do it.
So Kingston Complete Streets, that's probably a phrase that might stymie some people. What does complete streets mean?
It's just a shift in the way of the way we think about our streets. Our communities have become auto-centric over the last 80 years, and this is just an attempt to kind of rethink how we use those transportation corridors, not just for automobiles, but for pedestrians, for bicycles, for transit, for people of all ages and abilities. It's trying to kind of strike a better balance about the way we use our streets.
Okay. So how we use the streets, what were the elements or the components of the Complete Street study that's coming out here shortly?
Well, it's primarily based on transportation, obviously. It's how we move automobiles through the community, where they park, how they circulate, how they go through intersections. So it's a lot of detailed study of automobile circulation, but it's also looking at destinations that people want to be able to walk or ride their bikes to. It's looking at community draws, parks, schools, those kinds of things that are kind of disconnected in our community. So people don't have to get into their car and drive to those kinds of things. They can walk, or they can ride their bike, or they can ride public transit. So there's that transportation component. We're also looking at opportunities for making the streets more safe and more comfortable, urban design elements, doing parking analysis, looking at community transit, as we're looking at street sections, we want to look at how we deal with stormwater. There's a lot of other opportunities that are kind of secondary to this, but are attached to it. So,
Okay.
There's a
So
lot
trying to be holistic. It's not just
correct.
putting in a sidewalk. It's about sort of what's the entire environment around it, from lighting to.
Exactly.
Okay.
There's opportunities for enhancing economic development downtown by making the downtowns more comfortable for pedestrians and those kinds of things. So there's a lot of elements to it.
So each one of those elements is then fairly important unto itself, but how did this really kind of come to pass where I think, at least historically maybe, and correct me if I'm wrong, but people tended to specialize maybe in one thing or versus the other, and didn't
Right.
necessarily start pulling the parts together.
Right.
So when did this shift start to happen?
Over
would
the
you
last
say?
15 years, maybe, in planning circles, there's been kind of a revolution to go beyond thinking of automobiles as our primary concern and start to deal with all different modes. And it's partly got to do with the advent of ADA and accessibility issues, and health departments recognizing the health benefits of moving differently through our communities and not riding everywhere. So there's kind of a confluence or a kind of a harmonic convergence of a very interests that have triggered this, and it's been a very strong movement. There's a National Complete Streets Coalition that promotes this, and this is funded by a PSRC grant. This project, and they're doing it all over the Northwest communities.
And I know that you mentioned something as sort of people having other different modalities other than just cars. So
Right.
the buses, the transit, the pedestrian movement, et cetera. And it seems to be that more and more that I've gotten involved in transportation funding, it seems like you have to have basically the non-motorized component to any project these days in order to be competitive.
That's correct. Federal funding now requires that you not just deal with automobiles, but you also have other modes considered in your transportation planning. You can no longer just plan for motor vehicles.
So I know we had a steering committee that was
Yes.
part of this group. There have been a couple of different public meetings where folks were able to come in and sort of see some of the data that was gathered and some of the preliminary design
Correct.
projects. How important is that community involvement to really having a plan or basically a study that is reflective of the community?
Well, it's important initially that we make sure the community understands, first of all, what we're doing, and that we're focusing in the right places. We understand their community and what they're trying to do and how they move about their community, what their local destinations and places they'd like to go to are. And then as we work our way through the process of planning these streets, we want to talk to them about what's happening in front of their house or in front of their business, and making sure that the parking works for them and the circulation works for them, and that we're kind of making the right decisions about the things that affect them directly. So there's a kind of a sequence of focus as we work through that public process.
Okay. So did this study then result in a list of potential projects?
Yes, there are, in the report, in the final document, there will be a list and a description of 21 or 22 projects throughout Kingston. Kingston's a little bit of an anomaly because of the ferry. Obviously, there are different issues here, and one of the things that's kind of going on concurrently is the consideration of changing the way ferry traffic ingresses and egresses the ferry, so that which way that ends up evolving will depend or influence to some degree how we deal with these streets.
Okay.
So there's a lot going on, and there's a series of projects that we will put cost estimates on, and we will prioritize as we go through the process.
So the prioritization hasn't taken place then yet?
We've had concurrence with the steering committee and the public on the criteria for prioritization, and it has to do with the obvious things. Safety is most important, and kind of closing the gaps and making the connections to the destinations and those kinds of things. But it also has to do with constructability and cost and available right-of-way and those kinds of things. So So everybody agrees on the criteria, and we're in the process now of applying those criteria and coming up with a kind of a high, medium, and low priority list of projects.
Okay. Will there be some thought to sort of what potential funding might be available for those? Because we have, local transportation dollars,
Right.
there's other regional things. Whether or not you federalize a project changes the landscape entirely.
In fact, the first project, kind of at the top of the priority list, is Washington Boulevard, which has already been fortunate enough to receive a grant, another PSRC grant. So the money's available now to start through the design process on that project and implement that project. But you're right, then these projects get built into the TIP and the local transportation funding opportunities, and will evolve over time.
So which I think it can always be a challenge for a community. We'll see 20, 21 different projects.
Right.
Prioritized, yes, but then this kind of nebulous process with
Right.
our transportation improvement program that happens, and it's updated every year for a new 6-year cycle.
Right.
How do those end up competing on a countywide basis for local funding, and what type of other funding might be available? I think is a hard one, because
Right.
the community may not see it happening necessarily as quickly as they would like, given the timing of the projects that might unfold.
It's true. There's frustration in all communities that there seem to be a lot of planning efforts underway, but they don't see something show up next week on their street. So it's tough to convince people that they need to wait and be patient over time as priorities advance and funding becomes available.
Yeah, one thing I've learned over the past couple of years is that the whole funding of projects has changed. You used to be able to get funding from beginning of design through right-of-way, through construction, and now it has to be phased in segments of design and engineering to right-of-way to construction, and so you have to phase them and stagger them all, and it unfortunately means time.
It takes a lot of time. And from the conception to the completion of a project can be years sometimes. So it's frustrating for the local community.
But I think what's important is that we have a plan,
Right.
and it's prioritized, and we have a way of moving forward, which is something that we definitely need to do for Kingston and
Right.
communities beyond. So
If you don't have a plan, it's not in the queue, and it'll never happen.
Exactly.
So it gets into the queue and eventually gets here.
So relative to Complete Streets, what can the community expect next?
Well, we have to finish the finalization of the documentation and go through the adoption process with the commission, and then start building it into the funding sources and the TIPs and those kinds of things. And then it's less on us and more on the county staff and yourselves to kind of prioritize things and work through the process. The plans in this document will be conceptual plans, so there's another kind of there's the balance of the final design that has to take place on each project. And
Sure.
then, as you described, then the funding, and then the acquisition of right-of-way if that's necessary, and the final construction. So there's a sequence that happens next. It's kind of out of our hands and into your hands.
Well, and I appreciate you taking the time to be here today. This is definitely a big project that, in terms of a study as it goes and coming up with projects, but I think it's a step in the right direction. For more information, we will have links to the final draft of the Complete Streets study on the county website. So if you are interested in that, we'll make sure that you have the link at the end of the program. But Terry, thank you so much for being part of this program. We've learned a lot about Kingston today, and we've covered different programs or projects, whether it's been the improvements at the Kola Kole Schoolhouse, whether it's looking at sort of getting that sneak peek prior to the opening of the Kingston Village Green Community Center, and now Complete Streets for Kingston, and what is the downtown core of Kingston going to look like in terms of this streetscape. And definitely important topics for all of us to think about, but I want to thank you for taking the time to view this episode of Commissioner's Corners. Again, the information that you might want to see in terms of links will be available at the end of the program. But thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you next time.